Gina. Today I'm going to show you how to make this bracelet. I haven't named it yet. I'll think of one and then I'll put it on the tutorial heading, but right now I don't know what I'm going to call it. But this is what it is. This is the clasping. Did a really interesting type of clasping to make sure that I had enough balance in the wideness of this bracelet here. And that's what it looks like. This is actually a fairly simple pattern. It's just in changing colors is how we create the pattern. This is just a right angle weave bracelet. However, the changing of colors makes it really interesting, and it makes it look really complicated. Also, we have some embellishments that we do on it, so that makes it look even more intricate. So this is what we're going to make today. Let's go ahead and take a look at it off the wrist so you can see what it looks like. That's what it looks like off the wrist. It's really quite pretty, and you know, you can make this look so many different ways with a change of color. So this looks kind of rustic in the colors I've chosen, but you can do it in pastels, you could do it in anything and make it so many different looks with it. So anyway, that's what we're going to make. Let's go ahead and look at the material list. For this project today, you will need 4x3 rondel crystals. I am using a opaque turquoise AB Chinese crystal for my rondel. And then you will need 2 colors of 4mm round pearls or whatever 4mm round beads you'd like to use. And I am using a bronze, brown bronzy colored pearl, and I am also using a butter colored pearl. Then you will need 8/0, 15/0, and 11/0 seed beads. I am using an 8/0 Toho in antique golden bronze. I am also using a Toho 15/0, which is gold olive iris. And I am using a Montana Gold Toho 11/0. You will need a clasp. I've been considering a couple things for a clasp. I think this particular button goes really well with these beads. However, I think the rustic look of this bracelet may not look well with a flower like that. So I'm going to get out this toggle. I searched everywhere. I can't find a toggle that I actually want to use. This is the closest that will match with my beads, and it's actually an antiqued copper. So if I change suddenly, you'll know why. Anyway, then I'm going to use 8-pound Fireline in the smoke color. I tried this with 8 and 10-pound nanofill and found that I was going through my beads a whole lot to hold them together. So I'm going to use thicker Fireline and see how that works. Plus, I think the dark tone of the smoke Fireline is going to show up less because this can be a thready stitch. And so it also takes a lot of thread for this project, so make sure you have a nice big spool like this or something similar, and start with at least a wingspan onto your needle, and know that you will need to extend your Fireline during this project, probably several times. So let's go ahead and get started with this particular project. Okay, so to start this project, thread onto your needle, which I'm using a size 12. You can also use a size 10 beading needle. Thread onto your needle at least a yard of Fireline, or you can do a wingspan. Spread your arms out side to side and measure from fingertip, length of one arm, across your chest, length of the next arm, and to your other fingertips. And put that much thread onto your needle, and we'll get started. And you're going to see that my fingers are going to turn colors with the dark Fireline. I've been told that if you run it through a dryer sheet, it won't do that, but I don't have any dryer sheets, and I'm too lazy to do that anyway. So you're going to see my fingers turn dark. Anyway, you're going to start this particular project, which is just a basic right angle weave multiple row project with crystals. Now, the way we're going to get our texture And our pattern in this is just by changing the types and the colors of beads that we're using, but we will always be doing right angle weave. So we're going to pick up, it's a little confusing at first, and I promise I will stay with you through several rows until you get the pattern. If you get bored with that, just forward the video. Pick up 4 rondel crystals onto your needle, like so, and then bring them down to the end of the thread. Leave yourself enough tail to extend to put your clasping on, or leave yourself a 12-inch to 14-inch tail. It's up to you. Now I'm going to go through the first crystal I put on to my thread. So just draw my needle up through that last crystal, and I'm going to pull these crystals into a right angle weave, like so. And then I'm just going to sew back through all of my crystals. So I'm going to go into this one, and into this one, and then into this one. And when I get here where my tail thread and my working thread are meeting, I'm going to tie a knot so that when I embellish this unit, it won't fall apart, because if you do not put a knot at this point, it just kind of spreads apart. So I'm just going to use the 2 threads and just tie a nice little knot. Bring them down between the beads as I do so, like so. Pull them very tightly so you do not have any excess thread. And that's what you should have. Now continue sewing through until you get to this bead. So we're right here between the 2 beads. Go into the top bead, and then go into this forwardmost bead as we move to our right from our left. So your tail is here. You should be coming out of this bead right here. Now we are going to embellish this unit of crystal. Every unit of crystal we make, we will embellish. We're going to do that by picking up a 15-0, an 8-0, and a 15-0 seed bead, like so. We're coming out of this crystal right here. We're going to go into the opposite side of the opposite crystal in a diagonal, like so. So coming out here, we're going to go into here. And we're going to pull the beads down and kind of guide them over the top of the unit as we do this. Give a nice little tug, and then pick up a 15-0 seed bead. Turn your unit slightly and go through just the 8-0 seed bead. So I've got a 15-0. I'm going to go through this 8-0 seed bead right here. And I'm going to pull my thread through, put my finger and my thumb on top to hold and guide my beads and my thread and keep everything tight, like so. Then I'm going to pick up a 15-0 seed bead, and I'm going to go down into the crystal I started in on the opposite side from which I started, like so. And I'm going to pull this 15-0, push it up on top of the beads, and give a nice tug. You want to make sure your tension is really good. Your beads are arranged nicely like into a little X on top before you start your next unit, because once you set your next unit, you cannot tighten them. So there we go. Now we are going to start our next 2 units will be units of pearls. This top row is a little different, but it has to be this way to start the pattern. So this first row, we're coming out of the bottom here, we're going to pick up a light colored pearl, and then another light colored pearl, and then a dark pearl, like so. Now, in order to have a pattern emerge, you need to use contrasting colors of pearls or whatever 4mm round you're using. You can do it all in one color, but you won't get the pretty pattern down the center with the diagonal stripes. Pull this together like so. Now I need to sew back through this completely and tighten as I'm pulling through. So I'm just going to turn my piece and I'm going to start sewing back through. Give a nice little tug after each bead, pulling straight up, not against the side of my beads, otherwise I will break my thread. Now I'm coming to the crystal that I'm attaching to, and I'm going to go through it. So I'm completely around the entire stitch, and now I have to sew to this bead to start my next unit. So I'll go through here, and I'll go through this pearl. Beads are sliding off my pegboard. Ooh, spooky. Anyway, on this first row, it's just a little bit different than the rest of them. Usually when you're coming to the outside of your piece, which this will be the top and outside of our piece, you will use a dark color. However, because this is our first row and we need to start our diagonal stripe, we're going to use a light colored pearl, and then we are going to use a dark colored pearl, and then we are going to use a crystal, which will start our next flower, because these flowers are going to be offset in a diagonal. So we will need the bead to start it. Each unit will have 4 beads. You have 1 here. So you picked up your main color, your accent color, and your crystal in that order. And then go through the pearl you're coming out of. And I'm just going to turn this over so I can sew back through it. So I'm going to sew through my pearl on top, and then just turn it back over again. I probably don't need to do that to confuse you, but we'll just do this. Sew through the entire unit. You want to sew all the way until you get to your connecting bead, and then we'll sew to our next bead that we need to be in order to start the unit. But you want to complete sew through, because this really needs the strength and the neatness of that. Now I've gone completely around. I'm going to have to sew from here to the crystal, because now I'm going to work down. This will be 3 units wide. So now we're going to go into the pearl here and sew down into this pearl. And here, whenever you're coming down, you will know that as you're making your units, you need to put 4 of your crystals here to make your next unit of the flower unit, basically. So what we're going to do is we're going to pick up 3 crystals, because we have our 4th already on the unit. So we're going to pick up 3 crystals. We're going to come into the opposite side we're coming out of and pull them down into a unit here. And then we're going to sew around this entire crystal unit. And now you can see I have a diagonal shape. And you will see the pattern emerge as you do several rows. It's just confusing at first. So I'm going to sew completely through the entire unit. And then I will sew into this innermost crystal here and put my embellishment on. That way, as I finish my embellishment, I will be back in this bead and I can start my next unit. So we'll go into this bead right here. And then we will make our embellishment. So we'll pick up a 15-0, an 8-0, and a 15-0. Go into the opposite crystal on the opposite side from which you're coming out of. So diagonally, like so. And draw it down. Put your finger on top of it and give it a tug. Then pick up a 15-0 and then just go into the 8-0, which will reorganize it and lay it straighter. Like so. Now you have to arrange these as you do them. They're not just going to pop on there beautiful. You have to make them beautiful. And then pick up a 15-0 seed bead and go into the opposite side of the crystal you started in. Pull the 15-0 seed bead down, arrange it, give it a nice tug, make sure your embellishment is tight, pretty, and neat. You can see what that looks like. And then we will start our next unit. Okay, now we are ready to make our next row. We're coming out of this bead right here. When you're coming out of the most right hand unit, so this will be the left and this will be the right, of course. When you're coming out of the lower right hand unit, you will first pick up one of your darker beads. You need two contrasting colors of beads. So I'm going to pick up a dark bead and a light bead. Now, I'm only picking up two because I have two beads in which to attach to. You have 4 units or 4 beads per unit. You have one here and one here. Pick up a dark bead and a light bead, and then we're coming from here, we're going to go into the light bead on the unit here, sticking out. And we're going to draw these into a unit, like so. Now we have to sew into this bead here because we have all of these beads attached, but we're not attached to this one. So we'll sew into this one on this side. And then we'll just sew back through this entire unit. Until we get back to the crystal in the unit we started in. Here. Go through it. And then we have to stitch over until we can get to this pearl so we can make our next unit. And here we also have 2 beads. So here we will only pick up 2 more beads. So when you start a row, you'll pick up 3, then you'll do 2 and 2. Now we're going to move over into the farthest bead here so that we can then attach to the crystal. Okay. So now we are coming out of this pearl bead right here, and we need to make our next unit. So we have these 2 beads to start with. On the left side of the unit, you will always need to add 1 bead and 1 crystal because you have 2 beads to work with here, but you need to have your next flower starting. So what we will do is we will come from this pearl here into this crystal. We're working towards the outside of our piece, so this will be the outside row. Come here, thread. And so I will pick up a dark bead on the outside. Anytime you're on the very outside of your bracelet, you're going to use a dark bead. So pick up a dark bead, and then because I want to start my next flower down here, I need to pick up a crystal. So I'll pick up a crystal, and then I will go into the pearl here, like so. And then, of course, I will secure this entire unit by sewing all the way back to the bead that I am attaching to. So I started in this pearl here, so I have to sew all the way back until I get to that pearl again. So I'm going to sew through here. And as I do this, I will give a tug after each, going through each bead, making sure that my unit will be nice and tight. Now I've gone all the way around, coming back through my pearl here. I will then go back into my crystal and sew all the way down to this crystal. Now I am going to sew into the pearl on the outside and then down into the crystal. Now I'm ready to start my next row. Anytime that you are coming out of a crystal bead here, you will want to start your next unit. So I'm coming out here, you'll want to start your next unit of crystal. So you will pick up 3 crystals. So on this side, we're going to, when we're starting a new row, we'll need 3 beads. Then we'll need 2 beads and 2 beads as we work. Then when we come down on this side and we're starting a new row, we'll need 3 beads and then 2 beads and 2 beads. So you can see it goes back and forth. Now we're going to go into this crystal here. And we will sew all the way around. You will see in the next 2 rows my pattern emerging, and then you can, as you're making it, you can just look back and see what you need for each unit. As you add your beads, you will see what you need because the pattern will be there, and if you put the wrong bead in, you'll break your pattern. Now I'm going to sew to this innermost bead here and put on my embellishment for my crystals. So you always want to be towards the inside bead when you do this so that when you work back out, you will come back into that bead and you can start your next unit. So pick up a 15-0, 8-0, 15-0. I'm going to go diagonal like so. So I'll go into the top of the opposite bead from which I'm coming out. Like so. Just like that. Then give it a nice little tug, pick up a 15-0, go into just the 8-0. Put your thumb and your finger together, holding your beads, and pull your thread through. Give a little tug. And then pick up a 15-0 and go back into the bead you started in from the opposite side from which you started. Arrange your beads, make sure your embellishment is really pretty, like this. Now, we are going to start our next row. Our next row will be another row of our whites. So when you're coming out of this side, you will have your dividing bead. So when you're coming out of your flower on this side, underneath your innermost petal, you will have a dark bead. As you're coming out of this side, underneath your innermost petal, you will have a white bead. So we're coming out towards the bottom of our innermost petal, so we're going to pick up 2 white beads, like so. This, and we're going to go into this bead here and this bead here. So go into the dark bead and pull. Now go into the crystal and pull. Secure your unit by sewing through it until you get back to the crystal that you started attaching in. That way you know you have a full thread through. And now we have to work over to this bead here. And then we're going to come up into this bead here. Now, you'll always be to the outermost bead so you can do your next unit. And then we will pop up into this crystal and then add 2 beads here. So as you make your units, you can just look at it. And I have 1 bead, 2 bead, I need 3, 4. So you know where you need to go. So go up into the crystal. And then pick up your dark bead, because we're doing dark towards the outside, just 1 will suffice here. And then pick up a crystal, because we need to make our next flower on our next row. So you will pick up a dark bead and a crystal, and you will go into the white bead. So if you look at it, you will see you will always have crystal, 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 crystal. So crystal, crystal as you're going down your rows. And that will help you with your pattern also, knowing what beads to pick up. Now sew through here. sew through here, sew through here, and then back into the bead you started your connection with here. So then now we have to sew down to this crystal so we can start our next unit, because now we're going to work down. Go into your bottommost bead, which is the crystal here, and because we're in the bottommost and we're coming out of a crystal, we know we need to add 4 crystals. You will always add your 4 crystals to your bottommost crystal bead. So if you're starting a new row and you're coming out of a crystal, you're going to add 4 crystals, or 3, excuse me. You will have 4 altogether with the one on the unit. So pick up 3 crystals, go into the opposite side. Work through them until you come all the way around and then back into the innermost bead to begin your embellishment. Excuse me. Now I'll come all the way around, but I'm going to go into this innermost bead to make my embellishment. So as I work through, I will be back in this bead when I'm finished with my embellishment and start my next unit. Pick up 15-0, 8-0, 15-0. I'm coming out of this side of this bead. I'm going to cross over and go into the opposite side of the opposite most bead. Pull these beads down. Pick up a 15-0 and go into my 8-0. Pull it down, and again a 15-0. Go into this crystal, and then arrange your beads nicely on top. These crystals are a little rough on my thread. It's a good thing I'm sewing through several times. There we go. And that's what that should look like. Now we're going to make our next unit. We're coming out of the right flower underneath the innermost petal, so we're coming towards the bottom. Remember, that's when you put your one inside dark bead. All the rest of the dark beads will be to the outside. You will have one to the inside to divide your pattern here. And when you're coming out of the right side crystal innermost bead towards the bottom, that's when you add that dark bead. So you pick up that dark bead, and then you pick up a white bead, and then or a light bead, whatever colors you're using, and then you go through the bead in the center here, the one sticking out. So this one will be part of your unit. You're adding 2 more beads to have 4. Like so. Now you're going to sew through this entire unit. And you're going to sew all the way through until you get to the beads you started in, and then all the way back to the outside, this bead right here, the outside bead. Oop, I just crossed my thread. Hang on, let me fix that. Okay. Wow. All right, down into this one, into this bottom one, and then get myself prepared for this one. Now we're making an outside unit, so you know that you have to have a crystal on the bottom and you have to have an outside bead. So on this side, we will always be adding a dark colored bead and a crystal. So you can see how it's emerging now. It'll be very repetitive, and you can see what you need because you can see the pattern coming through. Now I'm going to put on my dark bead and my crystal and come into this centermost bead here. This bead and this bead will be part of my 4 beads. Together like so, and then sew through. Now I'm going to go ahead and sew all the way down to this bottom bead because I have to work from the bottom. I have all 3 units on this row, so I need to start working my way down again and make my next row. When you're coming out of a crystal, in the very bottom of your unit, and you're starting a new row here, or it doesn't matter if you're starting a new row, if you're coming out of a crystal, you are going to make a flower. So what we're going to do is pick up 4 crystals, or 3, excuse me. I always want to say 4 because you're going to have 4 altogether, but you're going to pick up 3. Go into the opposite side, and now you have your 4 crystals to make your flower unit. Now you're going to go down into all of them. I'm just going to do it quickly so that we can make another row, and you should be able to follow pretty well now that there's enough pattern to see what you need to do. Go into the innermost bead, pick up a 15-0, an 8-0, a 15-0. I'm coming out of the bottom of this bead. I'm going to go into the top of the opposite bead, pull my beads down. Then I'm going to pick up a 15-0, go into just the 8-0. Make sure you don't slide through any other beads. Done that a million times on this pattern. Hang on, I have a slip knot. There we go. Now I'm going to go into, I'm picking up a 15-0, and I'm going to go into this crystal here. Pull tightly. Now I'm going to make my centermost pearl unit here. So all I need now are 2 of my pearls, my light color pearls. I'm going to come into this bead right here. So this bead and this bead are the 2 I'm attaching to, because with these 2 I will have 4. So I'm going to come into this bead right here, and you will see as you're working through, when you're on this side, you put your 4 crystals, then you put your 2 white beads, and then as you're creating a new row, and then you will go over and create a dark bead and a crystal, and you'll see as you're working through each side, whether you're finishing a row or starting a row, has a particular pattern, and as you work through it a few times, you're going to see, oh, now I need to do this exactly. It's going to be exactly the same, depending upon, like I said, whether you're starting or finishing a row. So I've sewn all the way through. Now I need to sew over to this bead so I can make my last unit. So I'm coming up through this one. I will come up through the crystal here. And because I'm making my last unit, I have to prepare for my next flower, and I have to put on my border bead, which is a dark bead. So dark bead and crystal. And then up through the white pearl right here. And now I have 4 beads. Sew through. And I'll sew through until I get to the bottom bead again to start my next row. So I am on the right hand side, starting a new row, coming out of a bottommost crystal. So I know, because I'm coming out of a bottommost crystal here, that I need to start my next flower unit. So I will pick up 4 crystals and move across. Look at your previous rows. You can tell what you need. Now as you come out of the flower here on this side, when you're finishing your row and you're starting a new row, you know that's when you add your dark bead here. So go ahead and continue your pattern. Work through it slowly. If you need to, back up the video, do it a couple of times until you get the feel for the pattern. And then it's completely repetitious after that. And we will go ahead and continue making these units until we have 13 rows. And the way that I'm counting is I'm counting the flowers, and because this is offset, your flowers are still going to count even on either side. So 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 13 on this side, and if I count this side, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I have 13 on this side. I'm still 1 unit away from finishing my very last row because I have to make this row on my very last row match this row. And if you remember in the beginning, we added 1 pearl here in white. So it's a little bit different than all the rest of the other rows. So you are going to go until you have the length of bracelet you want. Well, basically you go an inch short of the length of bracelet you want. So I want to have about a little over a 7-inch bracelet. So what I have done is I have made my units until my bracelet lays about an inch short on my wrist when I wrap it around. So that's how you're going to measure it. If you want to make the same length as I am, then you're going to have your 13 rows on either side. Now, I am coming out of this last row here. I've made sure that I have the same amount of units on either side, and now I am 1 unit short of this side. Instead of building another flower here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through this white pearl right here, and I'm going to come through the crystal here. So these two are going to be the 2 in my last unit that I'm going to share. So I'm going to share this bead and this bead. Normally I would pick up a dark bead and then a crystal, and then I would move over to my next unit. But since I am not going to make another unit, what I'm going to do is pick up a dark bead and then my white pearl. Instead of preparing to make another flower here, I'm just going to end it. So I have my dark bead for my outside and my white bead to finish off this diagonal row. And I'm just going to put this on. And I'm going to secure it. Now, darn it. If I can make my hands work, we'll do this. And sew all the way around it and secure it. Darn it. Can't sew today. Alright, so I'm just going to sew around it one more time since it's the end of my bracelet, and then I'll come back through this bead here and we'll do our next step. So sew around it one more time, come through this white bead, and then come through the white bead we started in right here. Let me show you what we have now. So we have our completed length, and you can see that this end comes this way, this end comes this way. So when you finish it, you just have to remember that your flowers will be offset, and then of course your last row will be offset. So if you started on this side and you're ending on this side, you just have to make sure that you have a flower here, a unit here, and then do your last unit in pearls, just like so. Now, we're going to do an embellishment between these units here, because if you get really close to my piece, you are going to see that it's a really thready stitch. Now, if you have done this in white thread, I have a sample that I started in white thread right here. You can see how thready it is in between. It shows up even more. I want to cover that. On this sample, I put a 15-0 seed bead in there, which is too small, and it's still not covering the thread. So what I'm going to do is to kind of fill this in, I'm going to put in 11-0 seed beads all the way down the row. So I'm going to use my 11-0 Montana Gold color now. And I am going to go from this pearl into the crystal straight down. So we're coming out of this pearl here, we're going to go into this crystal. And we're going to go straight down the row, pulling 11 seed beads in between each one of these units. And now you can see that fills it in much better. It's a nice embellishment and it covers the thread. So we're just going to continue doing this. I know on this one I used dark Fireline, which really helped with the thready look, but it's still thready. So, and if I hold it up like this, you can see the thread quite a bit more. So just grab a hold of your 11 seed beads. I'm going to back off just a little bit now, and continue moving down your row, placing an 11 seed bead between each bead in the row you're in. Don't pull really tight, just pop it down in there. Don't have any slack, of course, but don't pull it, because if you pull it really tight, see what happens to my piece? It bunches up. So don't pull it tight, just place it in there and continue to move down the row. We're going to continue putting 11 seed beads all the way down till we get to this end right here, and then we will come back. Okay, so now I have placed my 11 seed bead all the way down this row, and I'm coming out of this crystal right here. Now I'm just going to go into, so I'm coming out of this crystal here, I'm going to go into this pearl here and pull my thread through. And as you can see, I've extended my Fireline about halfway through. And you're still going to need quite a bit of thread, so if you're running short on thread, go ahead and extend your Fireline. Now I'm coming out of this bead right here. I am going to go into this one right here. So the next row that goes down, right next to the row we just did, we are now going to go from this bead to this bead. So just pick up one of your 11 seed beads and go into the next bead. And do the exact same thing you just did on the other row. And continue working, putting an 11 seed bead between each bead until you get all the way to the end, like so. And again, don't pull tight. If you need to adjust your tension by pulling on your piece, that's fine too. Just make sure that you pop it down between the beads, but you do not bunch your piece up. And go ahead and work all the way down to the other end here, and we'll be back. Okay, so I have gone ahead and finished my entire row, putting the 11 seed bead in between the beads as I worked my way to the end of the bracelet. And now I am coming out of this crystal right here after putting this last 11 in. And now I am going to come into this pearl right here. We're going to do an embellishment on the outside of the bracelet now. So come into the pearl right next to where you're coming out of your crystal, and then we are going to pick up an 8 seed bead, and we're going to slide into the pearl next to the pearl we're coming out of in the direction our thread is coming out. And then we're going to pick up an 11 seed bead on the corner here, and we are going to go from this pearl to this pearl right here, and just let that pop down in the corner. Now we're going to pick up 8 seed beads and work all the way down between all of these beads the entire length of the bracelet. Do not pull really tight, but make sure they go in nice and neat. So grab an 8 seed bead and pop it between the beads here, just like so. Nice and neat, but not pulling it too tight, because we do not want to bunch our necklet or our bracelet, and we don't want to lose a lot of length as we do this. So just go from bead to bead, placing them between, and you're going to tangle a million times. There we go, like so. Now you can see I don't have any space there, but I'm not pulling it tight together either. And just continue all the way around, or all the way down to the end. And then when we get to the end of this side, we'll come back and I'll show you how to continue. So continue placing an 8-0 seed bead until we get all the way down to this end. Right here. Okay, so I have put my 8-0 seed bead all the way to the very end here, and now I'm coming out of this crystal right where my tail thread is, right here, and I'm going to pick up an 11-0 seed bead, and I'm going to go into the crystal here. I'm just going to turn the corner of my bracelet with an 11-0 seed bead, and then I'm going to place an 8-0. Let me turn this so I can actually get to it better. I'm going to move my tail out of the way, but you want to keep your tail because we are going to be using that. So I'm going to go from this bead now to this bead, and I'm going to pick up 8-0 seed beads. So I'm going to go in between here with 8-0s. We'll use 8-0s everywhere except for on the corners. On the corners we'll use 11-0s. They just fit in there better without sticking out really far. So now I've put in 2 8-0s in between these beads on top. I'm going to turn the corner with an 11-0 seed bead right here. Pop that down, and then I'm going to start putting 8-0 seed beads all the way down on this side between each bead, just like we did on the other side. Just pick it up and then slide into the next bead. Continue putting your 8-0 seed beads in until we get all the way down to the end of the bracelet here, and we will be back. Okay, so now I have geez, I forgot how to speak all of a sudden. I have placed an 8-0 seed bead between each of the big beads on this side now. And now I am coming out of the corner here, and as I turn the corner, I will again pick up an 11-0 and put it into the next crystal and pop this 11-0 down in the corner, and then I will pick up an 8-0 and I will place it in the space that we left when we very first started going around with our 8-0s. So you've already got one here, but there's one missing here. So we have to go through here, and then we can also go through the 8-0 and the next pearl too, right here, and pop this down. Now we've completed our embellishments. It did get a tiny bit of shrinkage, so if you like to have a little bit larger bracelet when you're finished with a lot of movement, then you may want to do a couple units longer, or at least one more row longer, because it did shrink just slightly. But I think with my clasping and the fact that I'm using a pretty big clasp, it's pretty big around, I'm going to regain what I've lost. So what I'm going to do now is I have to get myself around this unit. So I'm going to go down into this 11-0 seed bead in the corner, and this pearl here, and this 8-0 here. And right here on this thread bridge, I'm going to tie a knot. So right between this crystal and this 8-0 seed bead, let me get you close, I'm going to go through, and then I'm going to make a loop and go through it, and I'm going to pull very gently a knot down between these two beads, like so. Tighten it quite a bit, and then you can work your way back up. So now we're going to go back through these beads. This knot allows a stop so that we can turn our thread around, because we need to come out in this direction in order to make our clasping, and otherwise sewing through the beads and trying to find a path back without crossing your bead path or your thread path is a little difficult. So we're just going to do it that way. It's simpler, and as long as you do it correctly, it should work really well. See, it's not slipping, so it should be fine. Now we are going to pick up, we're coming out of this 11-0 seed bead, we're going to pick up 4, or let me see, do I want 4 or 3? 4 11-0 seed beads and then an 8-0. And let me see where that lands on my piece here. Yep, that's about right. So actually I think I want 5 11-0 seed beads. So I'm designing this right now as we do it. I didn't make a clasping on my original design, so I'm designing this So I want, let's try 5. I'm going to pick up 6 11-0 seed beads. And then I'm going to pick up an 8-0 and I'm going to drop it down. So we've got 6 11-0s and an 8-0, and now we're going to go through our clasp. And then we're going to go back down through this 8-0 seed bead right here. Now we're going to pick up 6 more 11-0 seed beads onto our needle. And we're going to go into this 11-0 here. And then we are going to just travel into this crystal right here on the side here. And pull this down tight so that it goes over the top of your piece, nice and neat. So now we have to work our way back up into the 8-0s, and so that we can work our way back around. So I'm coming out of this crystal here. Did I come through that 1502? No, good. So I'm coming through this crystal here. I'm going to avoid the 11-0 I put in my embellishment. I am then going to go up this crystal here. So I've just sewn around this flower unit right here. And now I can come into this middle bead right here, and the 8-0 and the pearl behind it right here. And actually back out of this pearl, because we are not going to be in the proper thread path if we do that. What we're going to have to do is, we've gone through this pearl and this 8-0 here. Now we're going to go into this pearl here. So we're going to work our way down and back up. So just come through here, then go down into the pearl. Sorry about that, but I am designing and I apologize. Then we're going to go through this bead right here, and we'll get you closer so you can see what I'm doing. I'm just working my way back up so I can go back through my clasping and have my proper thread path at the same time. Now I'm coming out of this crystal here. I'm going to work back up into this bead right here. And I'm going to go all the way back up these 6 beads here and into my 8-0 seed bead here. Then I'm going to go through my clasping and come straight back down through my 8-0 right here and exit this 8-0. I want to anchor this a little bit to this bead right here, simply because of the fact that, here, let me back off a little. So I've come all the way around through my 8-0, and I'm just coming out of the 8-0. You can see my thread right here. Now I'm going to anchor to this bead here, simply to keep it nice and neat and tight. I'm going to pick up an 8-0 seed bead. I'm going to drop it down. And then I'm going to pick up a 15-0 seed, 2 15-0 seed beads actually, and I'm going to come into this pearl right here. Let me make sure 2 15-0s isn't too much. Okay, so this is what we're going to do. Sorry guys, I apologize, but so we're coming through this 8-0. We're going to pick up an 11-0, and then an 8-0, and then a 15-0. Drop this down, like so. And then we're going to come through this side of this middle pearl. So you're going to have to get your needle down in there, like so. and then exit just the pearl if you can here. Maybe a little tight, but you can do it. Bring this down like so. And then we're going to pick up another 15-0 seed bead, and we're going to come straight up through this 8-0, this 11-0, and the 8-0 our clasping is on. So right through all these beads and go out the back of them. So this is what I'm doing. I've got a 15-0 on my needle here. I'm going up through the 8-0. I'm ignoring the 15-0 I put over here. Going through the 8-0, this 11-0, the 8-0 right underneath the clasping, and I am going to pull through. Then I'm going to go back through my clasp. And then I'm going to sew back down into this 8-0, the 11-0, and the 8-0, and pull tight. Then I'll go through this 8-0, or this 11, or 15-0 on this side, sorry. Come through here. Pull it tight. Go into the bead right here. And I'm just going to go through all these beads right here if I can get through them. I'm going to go through the pearl, the 8-0, and this pearl. And I'm going to exit the pearl. I've got beads everywhere, so it's hard to get through all my, so I'm going to just turn it over and push it through. Like so. Now, that should be a nice, firm, stable clasping for this wide bracelet, because it's really wide. If I didn't connect it to the middle here, it wouldn't stay on the wrist right. The middle would either pucker or the clasping would fall strange, and it's just better to attach the middle here. At least that's what I had in my mind's eye, to make sure that I had something that really had a good support for this. So that's what I've done. It looks like it's going to work just fine too. Looks nice, and I think it's going to function well. So now I'm coming out of this pearl here. I am just going to sew down into the next 11-0 here, and down into a big bead and an 8-0 here on the side. And I'm going to find a thread bridge right here between this 8-0 and this crystal. I'm going to make a loop and put my thread through it, or my needle through it, excuse me, and I'm going to pull a nice little knot right there. And then I'm going to go down a few more. And then I'll tie another knot between the beads here. And then I will just cut off my thread. I'll sew down a few more beads, cut off my thread, and extend my Fireline on the other side and put my clasping on the same way that I put on this side. So we'll have to sew through and make our thread go the right direction. So I'll go ahead and get you started on that side, but let's go ahead and sew through a few more and cut this off first. So I'm going to cut my thread off. You can sew as much as you want and kind of give you a nice straightening tug on that. And I'm going to pull this off, and I'm going to extend my Fireline on this side, and so that I can put my needle on it and do my clasping on this side. However, if you do not know how to extend your Fireline, then you can look in the description box below, and I will post a link for that. However, if you left a long tail in the very beginning, then you shouldn't have to do that. You can just put your needle on and do your clasping. So let me prepare this side for myself, and I'll be back, get you started on your clasping on this end, and then we will be done. So I've extended my Fireline. My knot's kind of big for how I usually extend it. Hopefully it'll go through my bead. If not, I'll have to cut it off and do it again. But I'm coming out between these two beads here. This is where I originally started my piece, where my knot is, right in here. What I'm going to do is I'm now going to go into this 11 seed bead I put in the corner, pull through. Then I'm going to go down several of these beads on the side, 3 or 4 of them, and I'm going to exit an 8 seed bead between the crystal and the 8 here. Make sure my knot goes down. See, and my extension went down in there fine, so I'm good. Now I am going to go between these beads and I'm going to tie a knot so I can turn my thread around. So I've gone between them. I'm holding the thread tight between them here so that it doesn't move. And I'm going through my loop with my needle and I'm going to pull that down, really tighten it so that it doesn't move when I sew back up through. Now I'm going to sew back up through these beads. Get through these 2 here. I can't get through all 4 because my beads are laying at funny angles, so I'm just going to go through a couple at a time, 1 at a time if I have to, doesn't matter, just until I can get back up through this 11 seed bead right here, because you want your thread coming out in this direction in order to accomplish the clasping in the proper manner here. Now I'm going to do the same thing we did on the other side. We're going to pick up 6 11 seed beads onto our needle. Okay, so I've got 6 11 seed beads. I'm going to drop them down. And then I'm going to pick up an 8 seed bead, drop it down. Then I'm going to pick up my clasp. And I'm going to go through it. Then I'm going to go back down through this 8 seed bead here. Then I'm going to pick up 6 more of my 11 seed beads onto my needle and finish this side. So I have got 6 11 seed beads. I'm going to go down into this 11 here, and I'm also going to go down into the purl underneath it and exit the purl. Try not to go into that 8 there, like so. And then I'm just going to go into this crystal here. So I have to work my way back up into this purl so I can go over and secure the other side. So I want to make sure that I do not go crisscrossing on my thread path. So I have to follow my original right angle weave, not any of the embellishments, but just the original right angle weave. Now I have to turn into this bead here and go through it. Hopefully not mangle my piece as I do this. Would be a good thing. Now you can see it's getting nice and tight as I do this. Now I'm going to go into this bead here, down into this bead here, this crystal right here, into this crystal here. I'm skipping the 8 and all the embellishments that we put in. And we don't want to go through those. We just want to go through the original right angle weave. Then we're going to go up into this crystal on the side and the 11 on top of it. And then we can start sewing up through. Sorry, I need to turn my piece. So I need to go up through this crystal here. And I'll get into this first 11 and then I can sew through these 6 seed beads here. Since this clasping is a little different than what I usually do, I'm sticking with you and showing you how to do it again. It's a little bit different. Then we're going to go into the clasp, back down into the 8 here, Make sure you go through your clasping or there's no point in doing all this. Now, let's turn it this way just so my hand is in the right position. Now we're going to pick up an 11-0 seed bead and an 8-0 seed bead, like so, and we're going to pick up a 15-0 seed bead, 11-0, 8-0, 15-0. And then we are going to go down into one side of the pearl here and exit, like so. And this should be a little bit clearer than the other side since I now know what I'm going to do. And then pick up another 15-0 seed bead. Turn my piece again just so I can get to it. And I'm just going to come out of this pearl and up into this 8-0, the 11-0, the 8-0 on top of it, and then I will exit. And pull this nice and tight. And then I'm going to go through my clasp, and then I'm going to sew back down into the 8-0 seed bead right underneath the clasping right here, and into the 11-0 and the 8-0. Pull. And then I will go into this 15-0 here. Make it. And then back into the pearl here. And I will go into all 3 beads across the top here. And then I can go into this pearl here, or this 11-0 seed bead here, right here in the corner, and down several beads, or you can just go into the pearl too, it doesn't matter. I'd rather go into that 11-0 a little bit. Make sure I have the right amount of beads. This doesn't look right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, okay. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, I think I have an extra bead. That's why this side looks funny. So I'm going to have to correct that. But I want you to just see how it looks. I will correct it and I'll show you the final piece. But make sure you only pick up 6 beads. Then sew down through, tie a couple knots, do exactly what we did on the other end, and we'll be back. Okay, so I corrected my clasping, and I went ahead and sewed back up through it after I broke that extra bead out and secured it a couple more times, and then I went down and tied a knot. So hopefully you didn't pick up the wrong amount of beads, so you didn't have to do that. All you had to do was sew down a few of your beads, tying knots. But if you do make a mistake like that, then that's how you would correct it. So let's look and see how this is going to fit now, and I will measure it, let you know exactly what size I ended up with. That it looks like it's going to fit just right. If I can get my toggle to work here. And look, it does. It fits really well. I wish I had a better toggle than that. I'm going to have to change that one out when I get a prettier toggle. I just didn't have anything I really liked or anything that would match really well. And I was thinking about using a button, and a button would go really good on this. You could do exactly the same thing and just put a button on too. But I couldn't find a button I liked either. So anyway, this is what it looks like close up. You can see it looks very intricately designed, and all it is a simple right angle weave. But because we put all the embellishments in it, it looks really, really intricate, really difficult, but it's not. It's fairly simple. The only thing is that you're changing colors and making a pattern. So it's really, as long as you don't get confused with your colors, which you will a couple of times, it's bound to happen. But as you do it, you'll see the mistakes you've made and what you needed to do to correct them, and then you will know what to avoid as you do your pattern, and then your eye will catch the pattern and you will be fine. But that's what that looks like. Back off just a little bit so you can see it. And I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.